The Japanese commander boasted it could not be taken by 1,000,000 men. It was the most heavily fortified island on Earth, and it would fall in just 76 hours. November 19th, 1943. Betio Island, Tarawa Atoll, 1,500 yards inside a steel and concrete command bunker. The air is thick, hot, and smells of damp earth and body odor. Rear Admiral Keiji Shibazaki, an engineer by trade and a samurai by blood, traces a line on a map. Above him, 10 feet of reinforced concrete and coconut logs vibrate, a low, distant humming. It's the sound of the American fleet, Task Force 53, assembling just over the horizon. The largest armada ever seen in the Pacific. Shibazaki is not worried. He is, perhaps, the most confident man in the Japanese Empire. He looks at his island, Betio. It is not a tropical paradise. It is a weapon, 2 square miles of flat coral, barely 10 feet above sea level at its highest point. For a solid year, he and 2,500 Korean laborers have worked under the brutal sun, transforming this insignificant speck of sand into the most heavily fortified piece of ground on Earth. His gaze sweeps over the map, but in his mind, he sees his creation. He sees the 500 pillboxes and machine gun nests, their firing lanes interlocking, creating a perfect 360-degree field of overlapping death. He sees the massive 140mm and 8-inch turret guns, salvaged from the fall of Singapore, their barrels aimed not at the sky, but directly at the waterline. He sees the anti-boat obstacles, the barbed wire, the minefields, and the 1 2-foot-high seawall made of coconut logs and coral, designed to stop men and machines cold. And hidden within this, his garrison, 4,700 men, not just any men, the 3rd Special Base Force, and the 7th Sasebo Special Naval Landing, Force the Kaigun Rikusentai. These are Japan's Marines, elite, fanatical, and sworn to die. Shibazaki had boasted to his command, and he believed it with every fiber of his being. It would take 1,000,000 men 100 years to conquer Tarawa. Now, in the pre-dawn blackness of November 20th, the Americans are here to try. At 5:05, the world outside the bunker erupts. The humming is gone, replaced by a continuous, deafening roar that shakes the concrete dust from the ceiling. The U.S. Navy has opened fire. Out in the dark, the battleships USS Colorado and USS Maryland are firing 16-inch shells projectiles, the weight of a small car that scream inland. Cruisers and destroyers add their voices, a high-velocity chorus of 8-inch and 5-inch guns. For the next 3 hours, more than 3,000 tons of high explosives will rain down on this tiny 2-mile island. Inside the American flagship, the USS Maryland, Admiral Harry Hill watches the island vanish in a cloud of fire, black smoke, and pulverized coral. No one, nothing, could survive that. The pre-landing briefing had been confident. The bombardment would obliterate the defenses. The 2nd Marine Division's main job would be to walk ashore and count the dead. Inside Shibazaki's bunker, the lights are out. The air is choked with dust. Men are bleeding from their ears and noses, the sheer concussion of the blasts rupturing their insides. But the bunker holds. At 8:30, the naval bombardment lifts, shifting inland. The Marines are coming. A Japanese lookout, his face caked in grey dust, peers through the shattered observation slit of his pillbox. The smoke is clearing. His heart hammers. The American bombardment, it had been terrifying. It had deafened him, but his machine gun is fine. The concrete around him is scarred, but not broken. He sees his comrades emerging from their own shelters, manning their guns, their mortars. Admiral Shibazaki's fortress is intact. Through the smoke, the lookout sees them. The first wave. Dozens of small metal boats churning the turquoise water. He pulls the charging handle on his Type 92 heavy machine gun. He lines up his sights. He and 4,700 other defenders do the same. The Americans, they believe, are sailing into an annihilated, smoking ruin. In reality, they are sailing into the sights of an untouched, perfectly preserved, and very angry hornet's nest. The boast of 1,000,000 men feels very real. The trap is set. 8:55. 800 yards from Red Beach 1. The ramps on the first LCVP's Higgins boats drop with a sickening hydraulic whine. The young Marines of the 2nd Marine Division, packed shoulder to shoulder, squint against the tropical sun, their faces a mixture of terror and adrenaline. They are the first wave, tasked with securing the beachhead. They've been told the bombardment did the job. They are 10 yards from the man in front of them when the world explodes. The Japanese have held their fire, waiting until the boats were perfectly silhouetted, perfectly ranged. Now, from 500 hidden concrete and steel pillboxes, Admiral Shibazaki's men unleash hell. It's not a battle, it's a massacre. The air becomes a solid, whining wall of lead. Type 92 heavy machine guns, with their distinctive thump thump thump, stitch perfect lines across the churning water and the thin-skinned boats. Mortar rounds rain down, exploding in fountains of water and steel. But it's the anti-boat guns that are the worst. Japanese gunners, firing 75mm and 130mm cannons at point-blank range, are playing a shooting gallery game. A 75mm shell hits a Higgins boat. The boat doesn't just sink, it vaporizes. The 30 men aboard are instantly rendered into a red mist and floating fragments. Another boat is hit, and then another. But the real horror, the critical, fatal flaw in the American plan, is now becoming apparent. The tide. The planners had gambled on a high tide. They got a neap tide. 1,000 yards from the beach, the Higgins boats, loaded with men, slam to a grinding halt. They are stuck. Caught on the razor-sharp coral of the Tarawa Reef, the water is only 3 feet deep. The Marines have only one choice. Over the side. Men jump from the relative safety of their stranded boats into the chest-deep, turquoise water. They are 800 yards from the beach. 800 yards of open water. 800 yards of a perfect, pre-sighted killing field. They are carrying 80 pounds of gear. Their rifles, the M1 Garansare, held high above their heads. Useless. They can't run. They can't hide. They can only wade, a slow, agonizing crawl, as the water around them is ripped to shreds. You see the man next to you, a kid from Texas. He takes a burst from a Nambu machine gun. It doesn't just hit him, it tears his entire torso apart. The water turns from blue to crimson. You keep moving. Mortar shells land 20 feet away, the concussion wave punching you in the chest, even underwater. Men aren't just shot, they drown, weighed down by their gear, their lungs filling with salt water and blood. The only things getting through are the LVT-1s, the alligators. These are the new amphibious tractors, tracked vehicles that can crawl over the reef. But they are slow, their armor is paper-thin, and they are priority targets. Japanese gunners are picking them off, turning them into blazing coffins. Aboard the USS Maryland, Colonel David M. Shoup, the landing force commander, watches through his binoculars. His face is pale. The plan has disintegrated. The first wave is not landing. It is being systematically annihilated. His radio crackles with a desperate, iconic message from a forward observer. The issue is in doubt. Back in the lagoon, the second wave is coming in, right on schedule. They pile in on top of the first wave, adding to the chaos, the traffic jam of death. Their boats also get stuck. More men are forced into the bloody wade. It takes an hour of slaughter. By 11 a.m., a few men, maybe 100, scattered, shell-shocked have, finally reached the beach. They are not an invasion force, they are survivors. They crawl over their dead, press their faces against the sand, and find one small mercy, a 4-foot-high seawall made of coconut logs. It is the only cover they have. They huddle behind it, pinned down. On the other side of that wall, just yards away, the Japanese are waiting in their pillboxes, ready to finish them off. Inside his command bunker, Admiral Shibazaki receives the reports. The Americans are being butchered on the reef, just as he designed. His fortress is holding. His boast of 1,000,000 men seems, in this moment, an understatement. The first day of the battle has barely begun. And for the U.S. Marines, it is already the single bloodiest day in their Corps' history. 13. Red Beach 1. The seawall. For the Marines pinned against the coconut logs, the world has shrunk to 3 feet of sand and the sound of snapping bullets. The air is 110 degrees. The sun is a merciless white disk. Thirst is a physical pain, scraping their throats raw, but the water cans are floating 500 yards away, bobbing amidst the dead. You are pressed against the rough, splintery logs. You can hear the Japanese, just on the other side. You hear them talking, laughing. You hear the clink of their mortar tubes. A Nambu machine gun fires from a pillbox 30 yards to your left, its bullets cracking just inches above your helmet, kicking up plumes of coral dust. You can't go back. The lagoon is a graveyard. You can't stay here. The tide is slowly coming in, and the wounded men lying in the shallows are drowning, lifting their heads one last time before the water covers their faces. This is where the general's plans die, and the NCOs take over. A sergeant, his face black with sweat and grime, crawls over to 3 men huddled with a long metal tube. "Hawkins, we need that emplacement gone." First Lieutenant William Wild Bill Hawkins isn't waiting for orders. His platoon of scout snipers has been shattered, so he's become a one-man demolition crew. He and his men have assembled a Bangalore torpedo pipe packed with TNT. To do this, they have to stand up. "Cover me!" he screams. 2 men with BARs, Browning automatic rifles, stand up, planting their feet in the sand. They lean over the seawall, firing blindly, hosing the jungle on the other side. It's a suicidal act, but it works. For 3 seconds, the Japanese machine gun stops. Hawkins and 2 other Marines heave the Bangalore torpedo over the wall. It lands at the base of a concrete pillbox. They dive back down just as the Japanese gun opens up again, stitching a line across the log where Hawkins' chest just was. A Marine with a plunger detonates the charge. Whoomp! The explosion is deep, concussive. It doesn't just destroy the pillbox, it pulverizes it, sending concrete, steel rebar, and body parts flying 50 feet into the air. Go! 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 Before the dust even settles, Hawkins is the first one over the wall, his rifle firing. A dozen Marines follow him into the smoke. They have breached the line. What they find is a nightmare. This isn't a simple trench. It's a maze, a complex, interlocking system of bunkers, spider holes, and trenches. The Marines clear the main pillbox, only to have a Japanese soldier rise from a hidden spider hole behind them, swinging a sword or throwing a grenade. This is the new battle. Not a ranged fight, but a personal, brutal, yard-by-yard extermination. The weapons of this fight aren't rifles. They are M1 flamethrowers, which send jets of liquid fire into the narrow firing slits of the bunkers. The men inside don't just die. They are incinerated, their screams cut short. They are satchel charges canvas bags packed with 20 pounds of C2 explosives. A Marine has to sprint, under fire, right up to the bunker and jam the charge into the opening before lighting a 4-second fuse. Meanwhile, a separate battle is raging on the long Burns-Philp Pier. A group of Marines, led by Major Michael Ryan, has landed there, bypassing the reef. They are now fighting their way down the 800-yard pier, under fire from both sides, in a desperate attempt to flank the Japanese defences. As the sun begins to set on November 20th, the situation is this: 5,000 U.S. Marines have been put ashore. 1,500 of them are dead, dying, or wounded. The survivors, under Colonel David Shoup, have established a fragile, shallow pocket of control on Red Beach 2 and 3, no more than 75 yards deep. They are exhausted, dehydrated, and critically low on ammunition, water, and radios. Back in his command bunker, Admiral Shibazaki receives his reports. The Americans are trapped. Their foothold is pathetic. His defenses have held. He prepares a final, triumphant signal to his superiors in Tokyo. Our forces are holding the enemy. The situation is not serious. Victory is assured. He gives the order. At dusk, and again at midnight, the full force of the Kaigun Rikusentai will counterattack. A massive, screaming banzai charge, designed to sweep the exhausted, shattered American remnants back into the sea and end this invasion for good. For the Marines huddling in their new foxholes, The first night on Betio is falling. The killing on the reef was the prelude. The real battle for Tarawa is about to begin in the dark. 1930. Red Beach 3, a Marine command post. Darkness does not bring relief. It brings a new, suffocating terror. The tropical blackness is absolute, broken only by the orange-red glow of a burning LVT stuck on the reef and the green, ghostly trails of tracer rounds. The air is filled with the agonizing cries of the wounded, a sound that mixes with the gentle lapping of the tide. You are in a foxhole, your M1 Garand slick with sweat and coral sand. You have 16 rounds left. You are listening. You hear them. A clink of metal, a whisper in Japanese. They are probing, crawling, infiltrating. A single Marine, thinking he sees movement, fires a shot. The muzzle flash instantly draws a dozen Nambu machine guns, which erupt in a furious crisscrossing arc, forcing everyone's head back down. This is the moment Admiral Shibazaki planned for. His elite, fresh, night-fighting specialists against the exhausted, disorganized American survivors. But Admiral Shibazaki is dead. Around 17, as he and his staff were moving from their main bunker to a secondary position, a 5-inch shell from an American destroyer-own that had braved the shore batteries to get in close screamed in and detonated at the entrance. The explosion was catastrophic. The Admiral and his entire senior command were vaporized. The fortress is now headless, but the body still fights. The Japanese doctrine is clear. The local commanders, steeped in the code of Bushido, and seeing the American beachhead for the fragile, bleeding thing it is, give the pre-planned order. At 22:30, the night explodes. It begins with a single, high-pitched scream. Banzai! It is answered by 1,000 voices. All along the line, from the jungle darkness, the Kaigun Rikusentai charge. This is not a disorganized mob. It is a full-scale, coordinated counter-assault. They come in waves, bayonets fixed, officers leading with shingunto swords flashing in the starlight. For the Marines in their shallow foxholes, it is a primal nightmare. The Japanese crash into the thin American line. The fighting becomes medieval. Rifles are useless. It's a brawl of bayonets, K-bar knives, and E. Toulson trenching shovels sharpened to a razor edge. Men are screaming, stabbing, and gouging in the dark. A Marine, his rifle empty, swings it like a club, shattering his stock on a Japanese helmet before being run through by a bayonet from a man he never saw. At Colonel Shoup's command poster captured bunker, the attack is point blank. Japanese soldiers are on the roof, dropping grenades down the ventilation shafts. Shoup, a tough, no-nonsense colonel, is firing his .45 pistol out of the doorway. The line is breaking. The Japanese are pouring through a gap near Red Beach 2. They are 30 yards from the water, 30 yards from splitting the beachhead in two and annihilating the invasion force. A radio man, his face white, gets a desperate message to the destroyers offshore. The coordinates he gives are not 1,000 yards inland. They are on the beach. They are his own position. Fire on us! You're firing on us anyway! Bring it in! Out in the darkness, the destroyers USS Schroeder and USS Sigsbee understand. Their 5-inch guns, which had been firing illumination rounds, switched to high explosive. The first shells sound like a freight train ripping the sky apart. They don't land near the battle. They land in it. A wall of steel, as one survivor would call it. A churning, non-stop barrage of 5-inch HE shells walks its way just 50 yards in front of the Marine foxholes. It is a terrifying, beautiful, and apocalyptic sight. The Japanese banzai charge, which had been a wave of men, is instantly atomized. The shells, exploding on impact, don't just kill, they disintegrate the attackers. The charge falters, breaks, and is shredded. A second, smaller charge, comes at 3. It is met with the same wall of steel. As the sun rises on November 2, one Storday Tooth, Marines look out from their positions. The 75 yards in front of them is a carpet of Japanese dead. 500, 600. They've lost count. The Admiral's fortress, leaderless and broken, has thrown its single best punch. And the Marines, thanks to the Navy and their own raw courage, are still standing. The night of terror is over. The grind is about to begin. 7. November 21st, 1943. Red Beach 2. The sun rises on a scene of pure desolation. The lagoon is no longer turquoise. It is a murky brown and red soup, choked with debris, sunken boats, and the pale floating bodies of hundreds of men. The stench of death, of diesel fuel, and of cordite is overwhelming, a physical weight on the air. For the Marines who survived the night, there is no celebration, just a bone-deep weariness and a desperate, agonizing thirst. They spoon water out of a captured Japanese machine gun jacket just to wet their cracked lips. But with the sun comes the tide. Finally, the tide. The water in the lagoon is now 4 feet deep, and with it come the reinforcements. The 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines, and the 1st Battalion, 8th Marinesmen who had been circling in their Higgins boats for 24 hours, helpless, watching their comrades get slaughtered can finally land. They don't wade. They run, jumping from their boats onto the beaches, bringing with them vital ammunition, cases of life-saving water, and fresh radios. And they bring the iron monsters. An LVT, its engine screaming, waddles onto the beach. It's towing a 37mm anti-tank gun. Behind it, another LVT carries a team of combat engineers, their canvas bags bulging with satchel charges. Then, grinding its way over the seawall, its steel tracks chewing up the coconut logs, comes the M4 Sherman tank, Colorado. Its 75mm main gun swings left, then right, hunting. This is the new phase of the battle. The Japanese fortress is no longer an impenetrable wall. It is a series of isolated, concrete cancers, and the Marines now have the tools for surgery. Colonel Shoup, his command post, a chaotic hub of screaming radiomen and exhausted runners, gives the order. Advance. Clear the island. The tactic is born of necessity, and it is brutal. They call it the Tarawa Stomp. You see it happen. A concrete pillbox, 50 yards inland, has the entire beachhead pinned. Its Nambu gun is firing with impunity. The Marines are stuck. Tank, up. A lieutenant screams, waving his arm. The Sherman Colorado lurches forward. Machine gun rounds ping uselessly off its thick olive-drab armor. The tank stops 40 yards from the bunker. The turret rotates. K-boom. The 75mm cannon fires a point-blank high-explosive shell. The front of the pillbox vanishes in a cloud of grey concrete dust. But it's not enough. From a different firing slit, the Nambu opens up again. Flamethrower! Get the flamethrower up here. 2 men, one carrying the tanks, the other the nozzle, crawl forward under the covering fire of the tanks, 30 caliber machine guns. They get to the blind side of the bunker. The operator stands, aims the nozzle, and squeezes the trigger. A 2-0-yard-long, cohesive rope of jellied gasoline napalm shoots from the nozzle and splashes into the firing slit. It is a liquid fire that burns at 2,000 degrees. The whoosh of the flame is followed, a second later, by a high-pitched, muffled screaming from inside. The screaming lasts 4 seconds. Then it stops. To be sure, a third team, the engineers, runs up. They jam a 20-pound satchel charge into the hole. Fire in the hole. The explosion is deafening. It lifts the entire roof of the bunker 2 feet into the air before it collapses on itself. That bunker is finished. Now, you do it again. And again. For the next 100 yards, this is the grind. It is slow, personal, and horrific. The Japanese, with no hope of victory, no hope of reinforcement, and no senior command, fight to the last man. They do not surrender. They wait in spider holes until a tank passes, then rise up to stab a Marine in the back. They booby-trap their own dead. They lie wounded, holding a grenade, waiting for a Marine corpsman to get close before blowing them both to pieces. By the evening of day 2, the Marines have achieved their main objective. They have pushed across the island's narrow waist, cutting the Japanese garrison in 2. They have reached the South Beach, but the fighting is far from over. The eastern and western ends of the island are still bristling with defenders. On day 3, the advance continues. The 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, lands and takes up the attack on the heavily defended eastern tail of the island. It's the same, terrible work, bunker by bunker, man by man. The island of Betio is being consumed by fire. 4. November 23rd, 1943. The Eastern Tale of Betio. The men of the 6th Marines, the fresh reinforcements, are dug in along a line. For the past 12 hours, they have been pushing relentlessly east, using the same horrific stomp tactics: tank, flame, explosive. Now, they are trying to rest. The island is almost theirs. Only a few hundred Japanese defenders remain, pinned against the island's final point of land. At 4, the night is shattered by a horn, a bugle call. It's followed by the screams. The last 300 Japanese defenders, led by their surviving officers, are launching the final banzai charge of the battle. This isn't a tactical maneuver. It's a ritual of suicide. They are running, stumbling, and crawling over their own dead, a tidal wave of men whose only goal is to die, and to take one Marine with them. They are drunk, many of them, on sake. They are armed with swords, bayonets tied to sticks, and hell bombs, grenades tied together. They charge directly into the guns of the 6th Marines. But this is not the desperate, disorganized fight of the first night. The Marines are waiting. They have 75mm and 105mm howitzers, loaded not with high explosive, but with canister, rounds essentially, a massive shotgun shell packed with hundreds of steel balls. Fire. The howitzers erupt, firing at point-blank range, 0-degree elevation. The canister rounds rip through the night, turning the front ranks of the charging Japanese into a red spray. Behind the artillery, Sherman tanks fire their own canister, and behind them, a line of 500 Marines opens up with rifles, BARs, and 50 caliber machine guns. The charge doesn't last 5 minutes. It is not a fight, it is an execution. The wave of 300 men is simply erased, mowed down like wheat. At 13:30, after 76 hours of continuous, savage combat, Colonel David Shoup, his uniform in tatters, drafts a final, weary message to Admiral Hill on the USS Maryland. It is a masterpiece of grim understatement. Casualties, many. Percentage of dead, unknown. Combat efficiency, we are winning. The island is declared secure. Now, the silence. A silence that is, in its own way, louder and more terrifying than the battle. The Marines stand up from their foxholes, blinking in the white-hot sun. They look around, many of them for the first time, at what they have done and what has been done to them. Betio is no longer an island. It is a graveyard, a 2-square-mile pile of pulverized coral, shattered concrete, and rotting flesh. The smell is unimaginable, a stench so thick it gags them. It will haunt their nightmares for the rest of their lives. The cost is staggering. The 1,000,000 men, 100 years boast was propaganda. The reality was 4,700 Japanese defenders. Of that number, only 17 Japanese soldiers are taken alive, most of them delirious from wounds. Only 129 Korean laborers survive. The rest, over 4,500 men, have fought to the literal last man, last bullet. But the cost for the victors is a shock that will send tremors all the way back to Washington, D.C. The 2nd Marine Division has suffered 3,301 casualties, over 1,000 U.S. Marines are dead or missing, their bodies floating in the lagoon or being bulldozed into mass graves. Another 2,300 are wounded. In 76 hours, the U.S. Marine Corps has suffered more casualties than in the entire 6-month Guadalcanal campaign. The American public is not prepared for this. The first newsreels, uncensored, show the lagoon filled with American dead. The nation is horrified. But if America is shocked, Tokyo is stunned. In the command bunkers on Rabaul, Truk, and in Tokyo itself, the Japanese generals and admirals cannot believe the reports. They read Shibazaki's final, triumphant message: victory is assured, and then silence. And now, 76 hours later, the Americans are broadcasting from the island. This was not a perimeter defense. This was not a jungle outpost. This was Betio. This was the unbreakable fortress, the model for their entire Pacific barrier strategy. It was the linchpin, It was defended by their best. It had been given every gun, every pound of concrete, every elite soldier they could spare. It was not supposed to be breached. And if it was supposed to hold out for weeks, for months, bleeding the Americans white until they gave up. It fell in 76 hours. The psychological impact on Japanese high command is profound. They have just learned, in the most brutal way possible, that there is no fortress they can build. There is no island they can garrison. There is no line they can draw that the Americans, with their overwhelming industrial might, their iron monsters, and the sheer savage bravery of their Marines, cannot break. The unbreakable island is broken, and with it, the myth of Japanese invincibility. The bloody, slogging, 2-year road to Tokyo has been paved, and the price, written in the blood of Tarawa, is now terrifyingly clear.